Hello.
Hi, Grant.
Hi, Grant.
Don, how you doing?
I'm doing
It's great.
fine.
Here we are.
Testing my speakers here. Okay. She's working. Are we going? We're going to go live, Desta?
Are we?
If you can do it.
Grant, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
Hi, how you been?
Not too bad. Thanks for joining us. How are things in Boulder?
It's good. It's good. It's a beautiful day in paradise.
Beautiful. Out riding your bike? Every ride?
Yeah, kind of everything. It's interesting, Grant. We are interesting times we are in.
You still have meetings every month?
No,
No.
we don't because the university have closed the facility.
Oh, you'll have to go online. I'm doing one for LA and next week online. Everybody's going online now.
Yes, I think so. This is what we have to do. We have to. We just have to figure out how we're gonna do and charge people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that'd be a good idea. You got. I'm gonna promote Desta's new book here. You have to bring Desta on to do her book.
hello, Desta. How you doing?
Hi, Ross. How are you?
Just fine, thank you. So I guess Creston is not happening this year, which is bummer.
Yes. Big bummer.
Tony's here from England. Hello, Tony.
Hi. Hi, Grant. Hi, Desta. Hi, John.
Hi, Tony.
Can you hear me? Yeah, good to see you all.
Yeah.
Thanks for the invite. This is
Beautiful.
great. Looking forward to it.
I
Yeah.
don't see Alan here. Do you see Alan here?
No.
Quick hello from Lori.
Hey, Lori.
Sorry.
Hello. It's been a while since I've seen you. I know.
Beautiful. I wonder if Alan's got the different time.
Restart. I don't know how to do that. Stop video.
All right. What time we got? Nicole's not here.
Not quite one here. A few minutes before.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was 6 o'clock my time, not 7. So I don't know if, according to me, when I checked it out, on the internet, it kept saying 6 p.m. whatever way I did it. So anyway, I'm here. It's 7 p.m. my time.
Yeah. Wow. It's kind of tough with all the different time zones. There's people from all over here.
Yeah.
Let's see. Then let's see.
One moment. Yeah, I know. 1 minute.
Admin. Who's admin? All right.
Good question.
What time is it in Argentina? Maybe we got the wrong time. Argentina. Time.
It's 3 p.m. there.
Oh yeah. Okay. So he said he was coming at 3 p.m.
Well, it's 1 o'clock on the dot right now.
It's Russia.
Let me quickly message him.
Let me do this now. I'll get back.
Let's see.
What if we exit the lines?
So great to be here.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Security.
go back to this screen here. Can we not say anything?
I just finished watching the film again,
Oh, you
or
did?
pieces of it. I
It's
get
amazing,
emotional
isn't it?
whenever I watch it. It's so powerful in some parts that it's like,
It's
man,
very beautiful too. It's very
it really
beautiful.
is. And
Very.
I find every time I watch it, there's another little piece that kind of gets me to where it's
Well,
like,
there's
oh,
a zillion layers to that movie. I mean, it's just going in so many different directions, but it's all a whole as well.
right. And I think it might be one that you have to watch again and again, you know, as you discover more about your own experiences and the phenomenon. It's just so like, it is
Well,
powerful.
when I first watched it was last October, and a lot has changed in
Yeah.
the world since October of last year. And so I'm looking at even through a little bit different way than I did back in October.
Mhm.
It's very haunting. That's probably the best way I can put it.
Okay, I sent Ellen a message. D. That's pretty cool. Big D. Doug Alt. Go Habs. I was just going to say, go Habs. Rub it in, man.
Hey, what happened to the Jets? I didn't even know.
Shifley got injured 5 minutes into the first game, and it was game over. And Lyman got injured, and then another defenseman got injured. They had 3 major injuries in the first game, so it's game over.
Are they eliminated?
Yep.
Oh, sorry to hear.
That's okay. All our $7 million players like Connor, no goals, no assists, but he makes us $7 million.
You know, you can't predict the future.
So now we go back to UFOs.
Yeah,
We only had to watch hockey for a couple of days. Now we're back.
yeah. Well, I got to watch still, but you know.
There you go. Yeah, you got lucky. Okay, is Alan here? Does anyone see Alan?
I don't see him yet.
Okay. I just messaged him.
No, he's not yet.
Okay. Oh, Hazel's
Grant,
here
did you-
from Spain. Hello, Hazel.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks for dropping in.
Grant,
Okay.
did you want to give me permission to record?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Well, I gotta give Desta permission here too,
all right.
and I gotta change my name.
Hi, Sinead. You're looking like Grant today.
Okay, got that.
Morning.
Yay.
Okay.
Good to see you all.
How you doing, Linda?
I'm doing good. Surviving in the heat and the weird COVID stuff, you know.
How hot is it there?
Oh, you know, it's like 110 every day.
Where do you
95
live?
at night. It cools down to 95 at night, you know. It's great.
It's pretty hot here in Texas too.
Oh, I'll bet it is.
Oh,
You have
yeah,
the humidity as well.
Yeah, it's not too bad early in the morning. You go sit outside and it's a breeze, but it heats up real fast within
Yeah,
a
yeah.
half hour or so. It starts to heat up.
Yeah, yeah. And there's yard work to do, you know, so I go out there for like 10 minutes and I do work and then I'm like feeling sick. I come in and I cool off and I go
It
back
doesn't
out
take
and
long. It doesn't take
do
long.
some yard work, you know.
Yard
I've
work,
lived
you
with
just-
it all my life though, so I'm pretty used to it.
Yard work. You just got rocks there. What do you mean yard work?
Oh my God, we got trees and bushes and
Okay.
a pool and
And dead grass. We have dead grass.
we don't have grass, so that does not die.
That's what I used to do when I was in Phoenix. I would go for a walk every day, and I would kick the rocks back into the yards. So you don't like dogs just push one,
Yeah, sorry, that's what we do here for entertainment.
push the rocks up. I guess the dogs like it.
The Dan Smith. Do I see Dan Smith online here?
Dan Smith here.
I think I see him.
Dan Smith. Wow. Haven't heard of Dan Smith for a while.
Hi, Dan. He's muted.
Okay.
Maybe that's best.
Okay.
Hi, Grant. Hi, Doug.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Hi, Jessica.
Good morning. I made it back.
okay, so we are ready to go. We'll go without Alan. When he comes in, someone alert me, just jump in. And we'll do the interview with him because he does have a new story. He had Alan Stevelman from Argentina. He did the movie Witness of Another World. So when he comes in, we'll start the interview with him. Otherwise, we'll just sort of throw it open. But for people who haven't been on before, we sort of spell out the rules here is to try to keep the comments short so that everybody gets a chance. You can just jump in from time to time. I want to welcome my co-author and my assistant, Desta, who's going to be running this thing. She's going to be producing it, but she will disappear. She's already disappeared. Oh, no, she's here. Nice. She's here. And just to promote, have we got this? Can you see this? Desta, and the reason I bring this up is because our guest today, if you listen to his story, he got the inspiration for the movie from doing what he calls automatic writing, but he's working on a typewriter and he's typing on a typewriter, and that's exactly how Desta produced her 2 books. So it's kind of interesting that they both had the same principle. So I'm going to ask him about that and whether they're talking to God or their higher self or whatever. And also want to sort of mention that Desta, who co-authors books with me, doesn't do many interviews. She's sort of like the female Jacques Vallée. She doesn't do any interviews, but she is, I believe, going to do an interview on Tuesday night. And so anybody can come in. I think this is only, and she's going to talk about the big Desta and the little Desta. And,
God.
And she's going to be on the Winnipeg UFO group. And I don't know if we have a link. Do we have a link, Desta, for that so people can?
No, I was not going to send it or tell anyone, Grant.
So it's actually she's pretty informative. We actually went on an orb hunt to see Janet and Miles, who are on here, and Janet was taking orb photos. So Desta and I and Mark Olson, if people know who Mark Olson is, we traveled out of the city about a week ago, and Janet was taking photos, and we got 99 photos of orbs. So we were sitting there posing with these orbs, and so Tuesday night, Desta, she told me on the way to the orb thing, she told me a little bit more detail on how this thing works and how she spends a lot of time like I do. I'm not really that interested in the sort of the circus part, but I'm trying to figure out how does reality work and stuff. And Desta does an awful lot of work on this as well. She's trying to figure out how does consciousness work? How do you crack this thing? How do you get into the field? How do you get information? And that's what her book's all about. She basically is talking to whatever you want to call it, God, higher self, and she's picking up this stuff. And our guest today used exactly the same principle to come up with this movie that people are describing as the best UFO documentary that's ever been done. So Tuesday night, 8 o'clock Eastern, and anybody can send me an email, and when I get the link, or Desta may even put it online. Maybe she'll be doing the interview and also putting it online for people to watch. So that's that. My other assistant is on here today, Nikki Sakic, who is a little more visual. She's actually becoming kind of a radio talk person, especially with Spaced Out Radio, which is the big Canadian paranormal show. She's on there quite commonly now, often. And she and I are going to do another panel. And actually, Nikki set it up. It's going to be done this coming Friday night. And hang on, let's mute everybody here. Hang on. Can you mute everybody, Desta?
I'm muting them as I'm hearing them, but
okay. So Nikki is a research assistant of mine, and we worked on various projects together. And Friday night, Nikki has gathered a panel. We're going to do another disclosure panel. We've done 2 of them already. And I don't know if Desta even knows about this, but we'll invite Desta to tape. And we've got, how many people, Nikki?
I think 11 plus you and I right now, with maybe a wild card or 2 out there that, you know, they're trying to make it work with their schedules. So
it's gonna be like Hollywood Squares. Who's
it is.
online?
It's gonna be fun. I feel like it's like an episode of Crossfire, you know, since UFOs don't get any national news coverage these days. We just have to make our own news segments so they can borrow them, I guess. But we have Steve Bassett is coming back. Joe Buckman's coming. Victor Viaggi, or I always say his last name, right? Yeah. Dave Scott's going to join us. Danny Silva. Jay from Project Unity is coming on. It's going to be really early for him in the morning. I don't have my list in front of me, but yeah, there's 12
You've got a good list of people, and we'll discuss the latest New York Times article, and I might throw in the Podesta thing. I think people have sort of missed the Podesta story, which is pretty interesting. An interview he did that talked about it. So we're doing that Friday night. And the other thing we're going to do is, for people that might be interested, you and I and Sinead are working together on 2 other panels that we're going to do. And one is women in ufology, correct?
Yeah, we are. We're working on a women in ufology panel, but I tell you, Grant, Dave Scott stole our idea, and he's having an all-girl or an all-ladies roundtable coming up on Spaced Out Radio.
Oh,
that's 2 Fridays from now, I think the 21st. So I'll take notes. It's going to be a good panel too. But I think we're all working on a consciousness panel. Isn't that that's our big one coming up? So
yeah, that'll be an interesting one. The consciousness and on the female panel, I'll be the only male, and I will play the role of that women have played for thousands of years. I'll just sit there and not say anything until I'm spoken to. So that'll be our women panel. I don't know who we've got on yet. There may be there's some controversy as to people working
all of them. It's going to be like 300 women and you.
We'll invite everybody and see who shows up. So that's it for the promo material. So Tuesday night, don't miss Desta. It's really interesting to hear how she figured this thing out and how she does it. And Friday night is our panel on disclosure. And so I guess we'll just throw it open. Is Ellen here yet? Maybe we'll get Janet and Miles to talk maybe first. We did a little orb thing. Can you describe what we were doing the other night with the orb thing? And orbs is sort of like UFO. It's like religion and politics. It's something that you don't really want to bring up because people get all upset about it. But we were at your farm, and you invited us out there, and you served dinner, and then we went orb hunting, and it was pretty interesting when you saw the photos.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Really nice to have you guys out and hear everybody's ideas, and it's interesting because I think the orbs are always there. So we don't go out every night and shoot because we sort of know they're always there. Really, sometimes I do a bit of smudging before I go out, but no, I was really pleased with the results. I think it was great. And I think just I really like what you were doing with the rods, the dowsing, and I think we kind of mentioned about you were picking up energy lines and grids, and so what I would like Miles to do is do a shot from the drone where we have a picture of the yard, and then maybe we can you can show me how to do some dowsing, and maybe we can do some grids, because I'd like to see if the orb patterns are showing up on pockets where there's maybe energy grids. I don't know, just be something fun to try.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot. I forgot about the whole thing with the dowsing. Like Desta does everything. She does the channeling thing. She does QHHT. She does dowsing. She's out there with these dowsing rods, and she was teaching these people how to do it. And I was trying to tape it, and Desta was getting upset because I was videotaping her teaching these people how to do this. It was kind of interesting. So yeah, and then you went home, Desta, correct? You went home and you were trying to do the taping yourself with the because she was using a point and shoot camera, and a lot of people just use cell phone cameras for it. So she was using some. You went home, just talk a little bit about your experience where you were trying to duplicate this. I took my point and shoot. I could not get anything. I was out shooting. I got absolutely nothing.
Well, I was trying to experiment. So yeah, I came home and I have 2 point and shoot cameras that I haven't used in years and years. And I charged them up and went out, and I got lots of pictures with orbs. I got lots without. And then I started going out every night that week, which was last week, I guess, into different places near, running water or near the forest, near the trees, trying to, do a meditation first, or think bad thoughts first, think good thoughts first. Cause I couldn't, I was sure, cause I was getting so many pictures that it was just dust, and, but it doesn't show up all the time. So I don't know what it is that brings them, but yeah, I got a lot of good ones, and it's interesting. So definitely I'd love to come back out, Janet, Miles, and douse and look at the grid and see what else we can find.
Oh yeah, it'd be
Have you
great
ever
fun.
tried looking at going some places like a sacred site? Like I know a few years ago, I got quite a few. Went to Bandelier National Monument in New Mexico, and went up into a kiva that was in a cave and underneath, and they were everywhere inside the kiva. And I also went to Loretto Chapel there in Santa Fe, and it was crazy. So that's why. Have you tried going to places like that?
I think Janet's farm is kind of special. Describe where your farm is, Janet and Miles, and how that ties.
Yeah, so it's across the river from Lower Fort Garry. So Lower Fort Garry in this area being one of the places where, the fur trade was going on. So the road we're on is called Clark Road. So we know there was a big tract of land across the road from the fort that was eventually given to one of the owners, or the gentlemen that ran the fort. I'm not sure if they're called stewards or what they were called. But before that, historically, I think there would be lots of First Nations people in the area because they'd be trading with the fort. And when in the 1905 time, when the pioneers, they were doing the quarter section for people coming, say, from Europe, we got to know the gentleman. His dad came, and Mr. Rapco's father came and broke a lot of the land, and he would find balls of pemmican under some trees because it's not so far off the river. So I think there's lots of First Nation activity here at one time. And then prior to that, people were telling us that it was a buffalo wallow just because some different things, the way the trees are, the way the topsoil is gone, and the soil is so hard. So I think there's been stuff going on here. And yeah, none of my doing, but it's pretty interesting anyways. Desta's going to help figure it out.
We actually have an interview we're doing. Nicole and I are doing an interview with a guy out of Chicago, and it was actually Jan who's on here that introduced me to this guy, and he's got, like a lot of them, thousands, and his are just like totally bizarre. So I'm waiting for Nicole to go down there, and he's actually providing me the photo of one of the orbs. Like a lot of these are like the beams and the mist and all these kind of photographs, not just orb photographs. And he has one, and Nicole has seen it, where the being is standing on this stairway, and it was like pretty obvious. You could just see it. It's like, what's that thing doing on the stairway? And it was like, you weren't even looking at the orbs. It was just this thing. So he's going to provide me with that. And it may actually be in my email box now, but there's a lot of these people around who are getting this kind of stuff. And we just did an interview, Desta and I, yesterday with Shannon Taggart, who is famous. She's a professional photographer her whole life. Her husband's a professional photographer. And she films at seances. And she was picking up orb photographs. We were asking her about how this works and stuff. And she talked as well about this consciousness link. There's some sort of consciousness link, but to her, she doesn't really think it proves anything. And she has some pretty interesting photos that she got in various seances. So we're starting to get, people who are in the field, like photographers, And I think Bob and Nicole, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Bob McGuire, who's going to be on our disclosure panel Friday night, he worked for intelligence for 30 years at the Institute for Defense Analysis, which is a top military think tank. He's got $100,000 worth of Adobe software, and he's going to be analyzing all the orb and UFO photographs taken by Chris Bledsoe. And the count that was given to me was 7,000 photos. So they're going to do an analysis of those. So we're starting to get into this thing where we have, I would say, 500,000 orb photos from various sources that I know of. So there's a lot of material. It's being able to get people to analyze the material and then figure out when does it work, when does it not work, and what does it mean. But there are, we have 3 of the orb people, and almost everybody has over 1,000 photos. Everybody believes they see faces in the orbs. Everybody can sense when to take the photograph. They all get the orbs, they all get the mist, they all get the beams. And so we are looking at them, and we have 3 of them that have beings in the photos. The one from Macedonia, the being is maybe 4 feet away, just right there. It's just like really incredible. So
Grant, I think you might want to mention too that oftentimes they don't see these things until they get the photos developed. It's not like, oh, here's all this stuff in the picture, you know. It's like, oh, I have to take a picture of this tree for some reason, or just take a picture of my friends all having a good time and waving, and then you develop them, and then boom, or you analyze them further and they appear. So
well, I guess my question is I actually see them at times.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say, it seems like a lot of people can take pictures of them, but until you see them, I mean, they're very conscious of you. Although the first time I saw one, I scared it. I mean, it went, what? It zipped off. And then after that, they gradually kind of got used to the idea that I could see them. So that's why I wonder, are there very many people who see them without the benefit of a camera?
Janet, you can speak to that.
When I take the pictures on my point and shoot, I hold the point and shoot the back of the camera to my the front of myself, because I don't want my eyes to be looking in the screen. So then when the flash goes off, most often you can see the reflection or the sparkle. So I don't see them in daylight, or I don't see them without the flash. But once you start practicing looking in the dark, and when the flash goes off, you can see the sparkles. And so the even though the camera, the back of it is very small, you can't necessarily see it on there. You're pretty sure you captured them because you can see these little sparkles. So that's one thing.
I've captured on film, I mean, on my digital camera, but seeing them I actually saw them before I started photographing them. So I'm always interested in people who don't need a camera to see them.
I think you can practice doing it. Sorry, Doug, but I think you can practice, because Janet said that when we were at the farm, and I noticed that when I was doing it exactly the same as her, just holding the camera on my chest and like taking the pictures. But you can see the sparkle, and the more that you do it, after a couple of days, I could see them, and I thought I could see them in the dark, and then I would take a picture, and then I would look at the camera, because it wasn't up at me anyways, and they would come in the exact same spot that I saw them in the sky as I was taking them. So I think it was just a couple of days. I think you can just like get used to what they look like, because you're just not used to it until you start, you know, practicing or experimenting or whatever with
well, they're
it.
not like super bright or super, you know. I remember one time I was in with a group of people and we were talking, and I became aware of one sitting over here, it was like it was listening to our conversation. It was real strange. And I've seen little teensy ones, but I've also seen basketball sized ones. So I don't know, I just kind of wonder, you know, if more and more people are going to have that ability to actually start seeing them without the benefit of that camera. That would be cool.
I see them, and I am not very successful at getting any of them on camera. I kind of just even stopped trying. The ones I see are kind of so fast, or
Yeah.
it's almost like they're there and they're gone.
Yeah.
And what I have started playing around with myself is, yes, the different kinds of cameras that you can use, not all digital point and click. I even broke out my old Polaroid camera to see if that would be a difference. And every once in a while, I feel compelled. It's like, take a picture, you know, or stop here, shoot, take a picture, take a video. And I'm always like, what am I looking at? But then once I do analyze them a little bit and zoom in or look at a spot, then it's almost like, sure enough, there's one that,
Yeah, I've done that too.
I
I
wanted
know
to
what you
like,
mean.
hello, and then off it'll go. So
I wanted to say that I saw one without a camera in the daylight in Mexico, and I was with two friends, and part of the conversation on the way to a restaurant was with my friend John, and we were talking about the paranormal, and a woman friend that was with us didn't believe in any of this stuff. It was just not her world. She didn't care about it. We went up into the rooftop of this restaurant, and when we came down the stairs to leave, a blue ball followed us out the restaurant. It followed us out, and I didn't say anything. I walked a little further up the road, and I said, we got on the topic of UFOs again, and I said, oh, and I just happened to see one come out the restaurant. And the woman who had never experienced anything, she said, I saw that too. And I said, you saw the little blue ball? She goes, I saw it. So it came out, it just followed us down the stairs and floated out the door. A nice little blue ball, I would say about the size of a ping pong ball. And that's the only time I've ever seen anything like an orb without a camera or anything.
Very good.
Oh, that took the air out of the room.
I saw one, and let me tell you, this was weird. I thought at first it was ball lightning. This has been about 30 years ago, and there was a storm going on outside. My husband and I were in bed asleep, and there was this big boom, you know, and it was obviously thunder, and we both sat up in bed, and there was a big blue one hanging over our bed about this size, and it just kind of bouncing, and we just kind of looked at it, and then it slowly went away. And I know we really didn't talk about it till the next morning, and because I remember my ex-husband saying, he says, what was that? And he says, I said, well, what did you see? He says, I don't know, what did you see? And then the next morning, you know, it occurred to me it happened during the storm. And there's kind of a controversy about whether ball lightning is real or not. But that happened, and it was blue-white, and it was as big as a basketball. So, and we both saw it at the same time. So, I don't know. Very weird.
Wow.
I just was wondering, actually, whether the points of light that I see regularly, and I've seen for years, I've always called them photons. And one extraordinary event was just after a short meditation I'd done with a friend some years ago, and I was just putting the chair back, and when I looked, there was a wall sort of in front of me where I was putting the chair, and the entire wall, ceiling to floor, was covered with photons. And when I say photons, I mean little points of light. And they've always been white light, and I often see them around people that I'm talking to who are spiritually aware or awake, or some development going on there. And also, if there is something being said that is truth, very interesting, ding, little lights. Now, I don't kind of see alls, but I have photographed them a lot in my living room, in wherever. Grant's seen some of those. And there was a humongous one above my head about 2009. Grant's got that photograph as well. And I had no idea what that was. That was before I was even going public, as I have been in the UK with any of the work to do with ETs and stuff. The healing stuff I've already been doing for many years. But then what I've noticed is recently in the last few years, and I couldn't tell you if it's 2 years or 4 years, but a lot of the lights, the points of light, I still see them, but they have become this sort of electric royal blue. And this morning I was talking about a project that I'm working on, and my lodger, who's also of the same mind and all the rest of this spiritual stuff, just of course by chance, said, "Oh my God, I've just seen a huge blue light on your chest." As we were speaking about these sort of things which we hope to do, which will hopefully benefit a lot of people and ourselves as well in the world. So so whilst I don't see anything with the naked eye on the orb side, I see all of these with naked eye quite a lot, and sometimes they'll just flash in and out of you know, I won't be thinking about anything. Sometimes it might be just above a, you know, above the screen that I'm looking at now, which is it is a TV screen, but I use it as a monitor for my computer. I don't really watch TV, and but also just around the rooms, and sometimes it will not be so much a point of light, it becomes a bit like a swatch, just like someone's drawn a little blue. And that's a newer development, but I don't know whether that's a dimensional shift, that it's become this incredibly beautiful cobalt maybe is the right color. Yeah, blue instead of the points of white light. It's not that I don't see those anymore, but I don't see them as much as now I see the blue. So I don't know if that is, you know, anybody else has those things going on, but certainly our photograph, and no, not necessarily intentionally, the orbs in the room or around people, but now and again I've just picked up my camera or phone and just shot into the place, and it is that the place where I am is a place where there's been a lot of healing and a lot of healing work, therapeutic work, and also meditation, and I don't know whether that, you know, adds to this lovely energy that is in this place where I reside. Anybody else see the blue lights, or is it just me?
If I could jump in, you were just talking about that the blue orb, and I was driving.
They're more points of light.
Yeah. Okay.
Photons, I'd call them. They're really small, like starlight.
Okay. Well, but blue has been a common theme. I think Doug mentioned in the restaurant that a blue ball was following them out the restaurant, and I was driving late at night. It was a large, like 4-lane road, and I was or highway, and I started to fall asleep. Suddenly I just fell asleep, and as I veered out of my lane, I suddenly woke up, and just to the right of my car there was a little blue, like golf ball, glowing golf ball, that was following with the car just ahead of me to my right, and I saw it, and it startled me, and it curved in front of the car, and then it kind of blinked out. And that was enough to wake me up. But it was just a fascinating experience with another blue ball.
Thanks, Jan. I see you're in your car and you're heading from Alabama to Mount Shasta, correct?
Well, Chicago. I'm heading from Chicago to Mount Shasta. Yes.
Okay.
But I'm going to take several days to get there.
Okay, so let's go through what's going to happen at Mount Shasta, because when they're talking about the little points of light, we were there last year, was it? We're
Yes.
up in there, and we had the event where they got the message to go up on the higher part of the mountain, and you guys all took out and you broke up the circle, and you guys took up. There was 10 of you went up on the mountain, and Jeff Sell was there, and 2 of them had the experience, and I remember them reporting that they saw the little spots of light. They had this swirling smoke and these little spots of light, and that's when Jeff said to what was the other guy's name that was there up on
Vahid.
Vahid, yeah. So he said to Vahid is walking farther up the mountain. He said, "Come back, it's right here." And then he didn't come. He said, "It's right here. Come back." And that's, he could see the sparkles of light, and then they put their hand out, and it was Vahid got the big shock in his hand. So what's going to happen at Mount Shasta? Do they have they were talking about 111 people, and that there may be a being that is promised to show up this year. Can you go through that?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I, right now, actually, as we speak, this weekend is Enrique's group at Mount Shasta, which I normally, for the past 3 years, I have always attended, and I wanted to attend this year, but what happened is there was the Zoom call that you got me on, with a Toronto CE5 group, and they had the people that will be leading this group, and they are really stressing anonymity for various reasons. I think one of them has a business practice in the United States, and doesn't really want to come out of the UFO closet or whatever.
I think he's an architect like you. Maybe that goes with
Yes. Yeah, I was just avoiding, I was avoiding the details. But, when I heard they had this amazing experience where it went back, I think, back to when you all were with Paula in Mount Shasta, and Antarel showed up for, what was it? I think it was supposed to be 6 people, and one of the leaders accidentally saw him as well. And after that, he continued having contact with Antarel, and it was verified with his wife. So Antarel would telepathically communicate with him at night, and he wasn't sure if it was real or not. And then his wife would say, I saw this 10-foot tall being in our house last night. You know, it was upsetting his wife. And he's like, what did the being look like? And she described him, and he's like, that's Antarel. And this type of occurrence kept happening. He was at a lecture. I forget the name of the person that was speaking, but it was a lecture from somebody from abroad, I think in the Mission Rama anyway. And when he was speaking, Antarel showed up in the room. And not only did Antarel show up in the room where he sensed him, but the speaker actually sensed him and got a message from him. I mean, there was just a long series of these bizarre things, which led them, this group of 3, to go to Arizona earlier this year. And they brought gifts, and they set up 3 different portals in 3 different areas. And it was just insane, because it was right as the quarantining was starting, and they were very hesitant to go, but they got confirmation, which included when they landed in Arizona, they asked for confirmation, and a ship appeared. It's like a big ball of fire, and it responded to their thoughts, and they actually filmed it, and they shared that, and it's really amazing footage. And then anyway, so they got message that on August 20th, Adama, who has been working with Antarel, and supposedly Antarel's mission with people on Earth, somehow his mission is complete, and Adama is now picking up where Antarel left off. And Adama will show up in Mount Shasta on August 20th for this group, and is going to do some sort of a DNA activation. I can't understand it, but all I know is that when they said that, and because of the history of this Rama group, and when the beings say they're going to come, they do come. And whereas with Enrique's group, we don't normally, I mean, I'm not one of the antennas, so I don't get the information, but I've heard them say they were going to come, but never that they were going to show themselves for sure. And even when they've come, I've experienced the energy and that type of stuff, but I haven't actually seen them. I've seen orbs and things like that, but not something that looks humanoid. And so as soon as I heard that Adama was coming, my heart was set that I was definitely going to go with that group, and which is where I'm going now. And so I will go, and I cross my fingers, and I really, really hope I get to see it. The way it was presented is everyone will meet Adama. So I don't know. We'll see. Either I will or I won't. But I'm very excited about it.
Beautiful. And you've agreed to, when you come off the mountain, to talk to me, correct?
Oh, sure, sure.
Because that is quite a thing where most people don't realize they do the fasting. So you're there, and it's right in the wilderness, and it's a big event. And when you come off the mountain, it's almost like leaving a special world. So I hope it works out. I think they wanted 111 people or something. That was what the being asked for. Was that correct?
They did, but then there is a cap. Mount Shasta is limiting groups to 100, okay. Which is kind of an odd, it's like really 100, but they are limiting it to 100. And okay. So it's a large enough space, I understand, that we will be able to socially distance I'm not even sure if English is going to be the primary language. I don't think so.
Yeah.
But I will be there with someone, Estrella, who speaks fluently in English and Spanish. So she'll hopefully keep me up to date on what's going on.
Oh, you're with Katerina. She may be,
Yes.
she sometimes comes in on the call. The problem that Desta and I had with Katerina, she gets really involved in the thing and stops translating.
Oh. Well, thank you. Noted. I just said, please, if there's something really important, tell me.
Yeah,
You know, I don't, yeah.
Because I was in that event too. Desta and I and Katerina were there. I think there was, Desta can correct me, there was maybe 130 people. There was 4 people who spoke just English. So we were sitting there. And so it was, you just sort of like when they put their hands up, you put your hands up, and they put their hands down. You just sort of, you just follow along. But the vibration is still there. Even if you don't understand what's going on, the vibration of, because these are very sort of intense meditation groups that a lot of energy, mostly Latino people from all around the world, they come in to this event. So I hope it works out for you.
Thank you. Me too. I couldn't miss it. I couldn't miss it. So we'll see. And Estrella is at Enrique's group too. She's going to do both groups.
Wow.
So I'll get to hear about that from her.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, I want to mention one idea that a lot of people don't think of is going right to Facebook Live. Be like, what? Look, I'm meeting Adama.
But you're 4,000 feet up on the mountain. In fact, that's part of the story that happened. If you know the story with Enrique,
there's not connection like that.
There's no connection. But what happened was, if you remember the story, Desta and I wrote a book on it, and it's out there. Desta can tell me what it's called. I can't remember what it's called. But we did an event with Enrique's group. We wrote it up. And what happened was, I don't know, these guys don't sleep. Like Enrique just doesn't sleep. He goes day and night. So it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and they'd come back from the mountain where they had this encounter with this entity up on the mountain. And they came back, and then they go back in the circle, and they're doing this mantra meditation thing in the circle. And they're up at like 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever. So then they go to bed, and then Enrique is going to his tent, and he said, I looked, and he says, I've got 5 bars on my phone. He said, I've never had 5. You've never got contact. Forget about 5 bars. And so he said, this is so cool. So he goes into his tent, and he's got the 5 bars, and he's checking out Facebook and the news and stuff. And it's not till 4 o'clock in the morning, finally he decides, and the event starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, the next event on the Sunday morning. And it's 4 o'clock in the morning. He says, well, I guess I better go to bed now. And so he goes to the bathroom. He goes out of the tent at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to the bathroom, the outhouse that they have there. And suddenly he looks, and Mount Shasta is completely lit up. And he goes, Telos. As soon as he saw it, he went, it actually exists. There is actually a Telos. Because the mountain, there's no lights on the mountain. It's all snow. And anybody who thinks that you're going to be up climbing in the snow, in the middle of the morning in the dark is totally crazy. So it's all snow, and the whole mountain was completely lit up. And then he's going, oh no, where's my camera? And he's running around, and he goes to the tent, and the camera's not in the tent. And then he's getting all excited, and he's trying to look for one of the guys that fills for Stephen Greer. He's trying to wake him up, and he can't wake anybody up. And then he realizes the camera's in the circle. He left it in the circle. He goes to the circle. He grabs the film, and he gets these 4 women out of bed in the middle of the morning. And he's thinking maybe you'll find my tent, but it's pitch dark. You can't see anything. You can't find tents or anything. So he gets these 4 women, and they come out, and they're flashing lights, and these lights are all lit up on the sky, almost like they are inviting him to come up. And it was a spectacular thing. So that we know that for a fact, that there is no cell phone coverage on the mountain, except when they want cell phone coverage, then they give you 5 bars. When they want you to stay up a little bit later, so they're going to show you something. But Shasta, for anybody who hasn't gone, is quite an interesting experience. I just warn you, make sure you take clothes for night, because it's 85 during the day and it's below freezing at night.
Yeah, I think, didn't Enrique get some pictures later?
Yeah.
I think he eventually did get a few pictures that he did share, which was pretty cool. I think. I maybe I'm just imagining it, but yeah.
No, we put them in the book, but they're not all that good. You can see, and it is the point that you can't be. You saw the mountain; it's all snow. There's nobody up on there. There's no roads up there. There's no way anybody's climbing in the middle of the night. And he said, I think there was 40 lights on the side of the mountain, and it just looked like a city on the side of the mountain. So the photographs that he did take, we did put in the book, but you tone it down. His camera doesn't really take nighttime shots. And then once you put it in black and white, you can sort of see there's lights all over the mountain, but you can't really. And that was the thing. He was getting all upset. Was he was going like, oh my, and because he said that a lot of times the encounters will take place when you're alone, and he's going, oh no, this thing, I'm going to be by myself, and I need some witnesses, and he's trying to grab some witnesses to come out, and of course everybody's sleeping away, and he's trying to wake up the one guy, and you can hear him snoring, and he can't wake him up, and he's trying to get somebody to witness this whole thing with him. But they did report those little spotted lights. Jeff Sell talks about that, and we have that in the book as well, what they saw when you guys went up higher in the mountain. And I don't think you went up. There was 10 of you went up. I think only 2 of them actually went higher up. You were on a lower sort of level waiting for them, correct?
Correct. And then, but then after, so we didn't see them. I had actually fallen asleep up there and in the circle. And then when I woke up, 2 people were missing, which was Jeff and Vahid. And so then I started asking, I was like, what happened? How'd they go? And they said they just took off. They just went up there, and they went up, but you could only see a little bit, and it was just pitch black. So we actually got nervous after a while, and we started calling for them, and they weren't very far from us. They responded, and they said, we're having an experience. And we were kind of freaked out because we could hear them very closely, but yet we couldn't see them. And so we just kind of stood by waiting. And then eventually they came down and they said, it's still happening, come up. And they invited us. And so most of us walked up with them. And Jeff is very good about kind of sensing where these energies are. And he had us stop at one point and just kind of, he was like, soften your gaze and just kind of look. And down at the ground, I had forgotten this, but yes, there was these little pinpoints of light. It was just barely where you could perceive them. And it's like you could almost think that you were convincing yourself that you were seeing them. So it was really just for me, it was just barely there. And then Jeff told us to keep moving up further. He was sensing it, but they had, I think by the time we went up there, the energy was lower, but it was still very exciting just to be near it.
Yeah, it's an interesting experience for anybody who hasn't been to Mount Shasta. It is something you should do before you die. It's kind of an interesting, these Latino people, and that's where you get Alan, who it appears we're going to postpone this thing. He's not getting his messages, but he has this, he gets this automatic writing. And I remember when we were up there, we had the 8 flashes or whatever. Katerina was sitting beside me, Nesta was on the other side of me, and these flashes started. And then we were with Ricardo Gonzalez, and his wife had the cell phone, and she lights up this little tiny black book that he has, like a little tiny diary, and he starts this automatic writing stuff where his hand is going like a mile a minute, and we're in pitch darkness except for the cell phone that his wife had. And and there's actually a message both from Aunt Terrell and from Enrique, who was the female commander, and it had my name in it. It was kind of weird, it was like they're reading this message about me coming there and all this kind of stuff. It's quite something. There's almost always something that happens that they can make it. And yet, as you know, Jan, there's a lot of stuff where a lot of it is not just UFO material. It's meditation. It's getting your life straight. It's meditation for world peace. And there's a lot of stuff that happens there that isn't necessarily totally UFO stuff.
Absolutely. I would say the majority of it, as I'm still trying to figure everything out. I don't know that we ever figure it out, but what I'm starting to see is that it's more about us looking inward and looking at ourselves, and their contact that they have is just enough to prod us and just enough to bring these kind of disparate groups of people together. And then we have to kind of work out, our group dynamic. And, like in our group, it was told to Enrique and Mario that I think that only 1 or 2 people were going to have a contact experience that night. But we were a group of 10. And so we had that drama, which we didn't work out very well, of who are going to be the 2 people. And that was something that we continued to talk about, and we're still talking about how would you do it. And I think what we ultimately decided is you have to say, who do you vote for besides yourself? Yeah. And so it's just kind of making us think about group dynamics. And I think it's really just teaching us, I don't know, to kind of evolve and get along with each other here on Earth. I don't know, that's what I think it's more about, rather than, I think that's how they help us.
Yeah. there was even the story that Enrique, I believe, when you guys were up there, you couldn't decide who was going to go up, and then Enrique said, well, if we can't decide, let's go back. It's not meant to be if we can't figure it out. Let's go back. And everyone, no, let's not go back. And then I think it was Vahid saw the woman with the hood. Enrique saw the woman with the hood and the snow coming down. And then she looked at him. Vahid, the woman looked at him. And it's like, well, are you going to do something? And then he said to Jeff, do you see that? And Jeff said, yeah. And I said, let's go. And I think they just took off. They didn't ask for permission or anything. Because the woman, he said he never would have been able to live with himself if he hadn't gone. Because the woman was looking at him and saying, are you going to do something or not? You're going to, and that's how the two broke off. But you guys couldn't come to a decision as to who was going to go out. Like he was asking the question, who would like to go? And of course, everybody came up. Of course, we all want to go. I mean, it had nothing to do with that. It was trying to decide, because that's what they said. One person would have the experience and one would be the witness. So Vahid had the experience and Jeff Sal was the witness.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes. Yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
And you know, Mario did actually see that woman as well. He saw her first, but he was so blown away by it. And also he was very winded because he was the one leading us up. He was the one that, you know, had the calling and the vision of where to go. And so we were all following him. And, but by the time we got up there, I guess he was very winded. And also he felt somewhat of guilt, I think, being the only one to go, or, you know, he didn't feel right saying I should go and you guys don't go. So it's a very bizarre, it's a very tricky thing because everybody wants to go, but how do you pick just the one? And I was actually voting for Mario because he was the one that guided us up there, but I didn't get to vote for him because that's not the way we discussed it. But now we would discuss it differently.
Beautiful. Anybody got a story or anybody got a story they want to talk about, or I'm going to out somebody else here? I've got another story.
Yes, Alina wants to.
Alina, welcome to Florida.
Hi, hey Grant, how's it going? Hi everybody.
Hello.
Hi, I had actually shared this on the post when you originally shared the story of Enrique's experience with the etheric city that appeared. I remember reading it one day when I was parking my car in front of my house after leaving a meditation, and I remember just really connecting to the energy of that experience and like being really like kind of blown away by it. And then there was a link shared about the Great White Brotherhood, and there was a bunch of different things that were shared that as I would click through them and read them, it started to feel very synchronistic, almost as if I was being guided energetically. And I just felt the energies around me. I guess maybe also having elevated my vibration, having just returned home from a meditation, I decided to go outside into my yard and try to communicate. So I remember I was looking up into the sky and I started to ask for a sign if there was any beings with us, you know, with me. And I started to just kind of focus on this one particular star and kind of just fixed my gaze on that. And I asked for a sign because I really did feel an energy around me that was very notable for me personally. And so I started to notice a little bit of like plasma, like energy in the sky, but I'm like, okay, I need it to be something obvious that stands out in contrast with the darkness of the sky. And I just remember I started to just go into a meditative state, and I started to ask to be a conduit, to anchor in unconditional love into the planetary grids and just connect from the heart, which is something that I know that the Ramas always say. And it's something that felt very kind of organic to me at the moment. So when I started to do that, I started to feel myself get emotional, like my eyes got a little teary. And as soon as I felt that feeling, like the heart space kind of feeling opening up, I saw this like white light like show up in the middle of the sky, and it started to create a line, like a curved line, like if somebody was using like a crayon and just drawing in the sky. And I'm like, oh my God, did I really just see that? And I was just like kind of blown away, and then I thought to myself, could it be like an asteroid or something? But it made no sense because it had a trajectory that wouldn't have made sense. It was moving upward and curved. And so I was like, oh my God. And I started to like kind of try to attempt for validation of this. So I asked if I can have another something else happen so that I can kind of validate that this happened. And I started to once again connect and do the exact same thing again. And once again, this time it appeared once more, but the white light appeared over my head instead, and it formed like a squiggle in the sky, like a light squiggle in the sky. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I just saw that. And I got really excited. So I started to text a friend to tell him what had happened. Because we were actually about to travel to Bolivia to meet up with another Rama, which is Luis Fernando Mostajo. So we were kind of like, you know, preparing because we actually wanted to have contact. So, you know, the idea is to make contact when we get there. So I was like, wow, I wanted to share this with him. Like maybe, you know, we have to focus on connecting from the heart space. So as I start writing to him, I think that John was the one mentioning about the blue, the royal blue energy and like this, you know, seeing these lights or orbs or whatever. And as I was writing to my friend, I could see from my peripheral vision to my right side, in contrast with the wall of my house, which was a light color, I could see this giant blue ball the size of like a ball, like a circle of energy next to me, like a plasma ball about the size of like maybe about 3 feet tall, perhaps. And I just got really excited and I was sharing what was happening. And as I walked into my house, like kind of like pretty gratified with what had just taken place, I just had the epiphany that, you know, obviously they're guiding us to understand that in order for us to have this contact, we have to connect from a pure place, from the heart. And so it was kind of like a wonderful catalyst, this experience that you guys are sharing that served for me to also have my own little personal experience in my own backyard. So just wanted to share that.
Beautiful. Thank you, Alina. Beautiful.
You're welcome. Mhm.
Anybody else want to jump in with something?
I'm wondering, and maybe it's a sidebar to this, but I'm wondering if anybody knows the polymath, Walter Russell. Does anybody know about Walter Russell?
Rucker or Russell?
No, Walter Russell.
Russell, okay.
No.
Hey, no.
Walter Russell, if anybody wants to Google Walter Russell at some point, he's on par with Leonardo. He was friends with Nikola Tesla. He is one of the most brilliant thinkers the world has ever seen who has been marginalized out of history. And when you start to read, I've been studying him and reading him again, when you start to read his theories of how we've got the whole universe wrong, we've got physics wrong, everything about what he has to say starts to make a lot of sense. I go out in the morning and I walk 3 miles every morning now, early in the morning, and I have my Audible book on tape from him, Walter Russell. He's a polymath. He applies his brilliance from one thing to another. He can paint, he can sculpt, he can play music. He is a world championship ice skater. He does absolutely everything. And he, according to the original story, had gotten this download from the heavens. And that's how he put this thing together. I won't talk much more about it because you really have to see it for yourself. But he has a lot on consciousness. He has a lot on intuition. I think he died in 1960s, if I'm not mistaken. I know in 1953, he had sent his theory of the cosmogony out to 300 different scientists, newspapers, and everybody. And I personally think that he is so much trouble for the world of physics and for the world of history. Yes, that's him, Nikki, that's him. He's so much trouble for the world of physics as we know it that they had to get rid of him. And I just wanted to tell everybody to take some time and look at him. He's absolutely brilliant. So that's all.
Beautiful. It's interesting. I got the same vision. I got basically everything's wrong and 24 points. And you think it's this, it's this. You think it's this, it's this. You think it's this, it's this. So I have to look that up because that sounds familiar.
I have a question, Grant.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, what does Chris Bedlaw think the phenomena is about?
Chris, you're talking Chris Bledsoe?
Yeah, that's right.
He sees it. Doug can input. I'll give you just a little bit, and because Doug is very good friends with him as well. He sees it from a very sort of religious perspective now. I'm not sure he did when it first happened. People go through these things. He was very frightened at first. He sort of lost control of his life. What's going on? This shouldn't be going on. This doesn't happen in the real world. And he called them the Guardians at first. That was in the the regression that he does in 2008. He had experience in 2007, 2008. He has the thing, and he calls them the guardians. But as he goes along more and more, he interprets it as a religious experience. He's very, they were Pentecostal, very sort of strict Pentecostal. His wife, I think, still goes to church almost every day. And so he started to interpret, because in 2012, he had the experience where Doug painted actually the, whatever you want to call it, the Shining Lady or the Lady of Light. He has this encounter, because what happens is in 2007, he has the experience. In 2008, he gets discovered by Discovery Channel, and they ambush him with this lie detector that they give him 3 times, 33 questions, and it's supposed to be like 1 question. And they ambush him with this test, and they sort of discount him. And then he said, I'm never going to talk about it again. And then in 2012, he has this encounter with the Lady of Light twice, once at Easter time and once in October. And the one at Easter was the same time I had my download experience. I think it may even been the same day. But she said, Chris, you have a burden and it is yours to carry. And that's when he gets the idea that he is on a mission. He is to deliver a message to the world, but he starts to interpret it more as a religious experience than as an ET experience. So what do you say, Doug?
Yeah, that's pretty good. You know, Chris and his wife and family are no holy rollers by any means. It's not like they're cloaking you in religion and Catholicism or Baptist religion or anything like that. But Chris feels that God, whatever you want to call God, is real. In other words, there is a presence. It's not just a science, and we're not just wheedling everything down to scientific equations and so and so. And he feels that these are beings whatever you want to say, that are the proof of God, that serve God, that are around God, God's messengers. They're angels, they're cherubs, the way history had looked at it. And if you go back in history of time, it's tried to be explained in many different ways, jinns and different things. But he's very much that this is a spirit, this is a spiritual thing, and that it's the affirmation of God. And he feels that a lot of where science is going is trying to disprove God. So Chris very much comes from that point of view. I will say that I sat in the car with him in his truck at the location where the sighting happened down at the Cape Fear River. And I had torn my hamstring in my leg from ice hockey, and it was a very, very bad injury. It was all blood red, the back of my leg, and I was hobbling around. And we call it whatever you like, but we were sitting in the front seat, and he takes his hand and he goes, whack, right when we stopped the car, and he goes, dear Lord, dear God, he goes, please heal my brother Doug and his leg and this and that and everything else. He took me totally by surprise. I did not think this was going to happen. And I have to say that the following day, and I do not exaggerate, and don't tell me if it's timing or black and blue or whatever, that whole back leg of mine cleared up. And all of a sudden that injury that looked so bad, and I have photographs of it. I think, Grant, I showed it to you once.
I've got them, yeah.
Yeah, I was like absolutely amazed where it went. I felt much better. I was walking around. I'm not going to say it was 100%, but call it what you want. Whether I did it, whether God did it, whether they're one and the same or connection, it was just a miraculous thing. So, yeah, Chris believes the lady is the much more important aspect of his sighting, where his sighting is, the sighting in itself would be an amazing thing for anybody to experience. The orbs, the big orbs out over the road, the whole story. And I went over it with his sons, the little beings that were in the woods, but he maintains that the lady is the key thing. And the lady is the thing that he worked on me for about a year to say, Doug, I met you for a reason. You have to paint the lady. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know how to do that. How am I going to paint your imagination? I can't see it. I don't know. And I just kind of meditated on it over a year, and I finally made the painting. And he said, other than the fact that the face isn't quite the same, my face came out something like Hillary Clinton. I didn't mean it, but it did.
It did.
But even though he said that the face is not the same, he said you really, really, really captured the spirit and the event as it happened. So, you know, we've been friends ever since, and and he's included in my play, Grant, that you know about, in my musical, and it's going to be fascinating. But that would be Chris's take on it, that they're angels and cherubs and guides, you know.
I can add something that's, I'm going to have it in a book called Extraterrestrial, or maybe not. It's going to be very controversial. I look at the connection between near-death experiences and abduction experiences. And what you see in UFO experiences is that 50% of all experiencers claim that they can heal people. 50% say they've been healed. We were in Maine with Chris at this one event, and there was two women who had one had a stroke. They were twins in their 70s, and she couldn't hear. And she came to Chris for healing, and he did the same thing as you. He said, I didn't know what to do, so I put my hands, and he said, in the name of Jesus, or whatever he said, and I command you to be healed, or whatever. She came out of my lecture, said, I can heal, I can hear, I can hear. And I don't know if he showed you the medal. Did he ever show you the medal? And I asked him, he showed me this medal. It looked like he won a medal in the Olympics or something. I said to him, well, what'd you get that for, Chris? Like, what's that all about? And he said, I can't tell you where it comes from. No, I can't tell you what it is, but I can show you where it comes from. And that's when he shows me the mailing envelope from Camp David. And I went, whoa. I said, and he apparently, and my impression, he had healed somebody of a very famous person, and that's why he got it. But if you look at near-death experiences, the stat there is that 8% of people before their near-death experience say they can heal. Once they've had a near-death experience, 70% of people who've had near-death experiences say they can heal people. So there is definitely a connection between that spiritual realm and the UFO realm. And I'll give you one other example. If you've ever seen my YouTube, I interview Ron Johnson at least 3 times. Now, Ron Johnson is a Mormon guy out of Utah, and he talks about 36 out-of-body experiences that occur to him. The beings take him into the spirit world 3 times, and he's with his mother. One time she's actually there. He can see her. She takes him on this tour of the spirit world, and the beings had taken him in there. Elby was the being that he's dealing with, took him in there, and he describes this story, and I think I mentioned it when you interviewed me a couple of weeks ago, Doug, that he said his mother took him into this building. It looked like a temple in Nephi, Utah, a little tiny temple. And he goes in there and she says, Ron, when you die, you're going to get a room in this building. And he said, when I walked into the building, it was 10 times the size on the inside of the building as it was on the outside. And as soon as he said that, I went, oh, Chris Bledsoe said that too. Because remember what Chris Bledsoe said, he'd flown the craft. So I said, Chris, tell me how you fly the craft. And he went step by step. I went into the craft. I looked. It was 10 times the size inside. I looked outside. It was a small thing. I looked inside. It was 10 times the size inside. And you deal with on your panel there. What's the guy's name that has the experience? He was one of the guys that interviewed me. He had the same experience. Lovelace. He has exactly the same experience.
Terry Lovelace, yeah.
Yeah, Terry Lovelace. He talks the same experience where he goes inside the craft and is 10 times the size inside as it is outside. Yeah. So there is a definite connection between whatever the spirit world is and whatever's going on in terms of UFO abduction.
Yeah. And you know, Ted?
Yeah, can I
Go ahead, Greg.
I just wanted to follow the thread that I started with you there, Grant, about Chris Bedlaw's experience. Yeah. I knew, Doug, I knew from Grant's sharings that Chris was a Pentecostal. And I myself am a Pentecostal. I had a Pentecostal experience in 1976. And as you were talking here, I was remembering that in the early 1940s, when my dad was suffering from blood poisoning, that a man from a Pentecostal church where I grew up in Sheboygan, Michigan, came to the house one day and laid on hands and healed him. The doctor said they couldn't help him, but whatever accompanied him, that man that come to my dad's house and healed him, affected the entire family. Every one of my 6 siblings, there are 7 of us, has been impacted by very spiritual phenomena. And I see that there's a common thread of spirituality with even other people who may not even consider the Pentecostal movement with near-death experiences and coming back and being able to heal. Healing is an integral part of what the Paraclete that Christ said he would send to his apostles, the Comforter, also known as the Holy Spirit, would send to the apostles to support them in their mission. And so anyway, this has a lot of threads. And so I'm from my own bias, I'm a pretty convinced person that this is the activity of the Paraclete, the Comforter, who comes to encourage us to evolve our consciousness and how we see things. And it's all about the non-rational. It's all about the paranormal. It's like we all got to learn how to become children again, because children haven't learned to enter the rational knowing. They stick with what is basic to them, the non-rational knowing. And this is an inner journey. And this is a need for us to correct the one-sided spirit of the times, which is all into the rational, and it's driving the world nuts doing that. And we need this compensatory activity. So I just wanted to add that. And I admire Chris for what's been laid on him that he has to drop on the table here. And I'm looking forward to see the movies that he's gonna come out of his life, because I'm sure they'll have some interesting things in them. Anyway, that's.
Well, I was wondering, has anybody read this new book out by David Halperin called Intimate Alien? It's a fairly new book. It's very different. It's basically a guy who's a psychologist, psychiatrist, all of that, and he takes this whole thing. He says it's real. He never says that what we experience is not as real, but that we all kind of look at it and from our experiences as a culture, as our own personal experiences and what life has to us, and how these things manifest differently, yet similarly for certain people of the culture, or that it also speaks to the thing we were going to talk about today, which was about the other world that Juan experiences in that really beautiful documentary, because so much of what he experiences is cultural as well as related to the UFO experience. So I'm still reading this book. I would say everybody needs to read this book. It's very interesting, and it never comes out and knocks the experiences we have, but it paints them in a light very similar to what you hear Jacques Vallée talk about. Only these are more personal. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
I wanted to add something to Greg. Greg, that was very well said. Chris has been struggling with rheumatoid arthritis for a very long time and very sick and on steroids and this and that and you name it. And I just spoke to him a couple of weeks ago, and he's finally feeling better than he's ever felt before because he got off of all medication. All of it. He gave it all up. He gave up the injections. He gave up the this, the that, you name it. And he's given it up, and he's straightened himself out. And he says, Doug, I haven't felt this good in so long. And one other note on something Greg said, that there's a marvelous little movie made in Iceland about the elves and the little people and the little beings, and that the Icelandic people never taught their children out of that. In other words, they didn't raise their kids and say, come on now, that's all fairy tale stuff. They've maintained that these little things are real, and their spirits are real, and they're so real that Iceland decides to build highways around sections that are deemed where the elves are, and they don't mess with that. So it's really a remarkable thing. They have some wisdom over there.
Beautiful. Can I get Joe Burks to jump in here? Joe Burks is a lifelong emergency room doctor in California, now retired, but has actually worked on the healing, and he's actually worked on the Mission Rama thing. So I'd like to hear his opinion on this whole thing.
Are you talking about specifically medical healings?
Yeah, you did the chapter for the free organization about medical healings. You looked into this whole thing, and you're also familiar with the whole Mission Rama culture in terms of what they're doing.
Just in terms of background, I met a heavy hitter from Rama in '93, Dr. Fernando Lamaco. And he was part of the original Rama group that in 1990 went to Paititi, which was an ET base deep within the rainforests on the eastern slopes of the Andes. So he informed us about, he was a dental surgeon. He emigrated to the United States because, well, there was a civil war going on in Peru. And so we were, our CE5 team, which was one of 4 operational groups back in the 90s, were integrated into the approach that Rama used. So we carried that message of Rama with us for the 5 years that I was a team leader. That's my background, is CE5. The medical healing chapter, which I recommend people read, it's chapter 6. My co-author, Preston Dennett, and I, we looked at 10 cases of medical healings that were drawn from 753 people who responded to the free study, claiming that either they or someone in their immediate family had a healing as a result of contact with UAP intelligences, flying saucers. So those are the 2 areas that have been of interest to me. Grant, do you want me to elaborate in depth, or how much time do you want me to talk about this?
I just want to get your opinion as a medical doctor, because a lot of people will sort of poo-poo this thing and they don't realize there's actual people who have been in medicine their whole life that can validate, yeah, this is actually happening.
Well, there are medical people who are having healings on themselves, and they're not eager to publicize. But I'll give you an example. One of the cases that we worked up in chapter 6 of Beyond UFOs, which I recommend again to everybody, you can get it online for $10. It's over 700 pages. Our chapter, we featured an emergency room physician, a young man who, when he was a medical student, had a bad result from dental surgery. They had removed his wisdom tooth from the lower part of his jaw, and they cut by accident the inferior alveolar artery. And when that artery is cut, it doesn't necessarily start bleeding immediately. He got home, he was applying pressure to where the wisdom tooth had been removed, and then it opened up full blast. And he's a medical student, he's living in a furnished room, and his mouth keeps filling with blood. Every beat of his heart, blood is squirting into his mouth. And this is a potential life-threatening occurrence because you can aspirate the blood and into your lungs and choke, or the bleeder can go backwards and form what's called a false aneurysm and go into your heart and obstruct your coronary arteries. So it's a very dangerous type of situation. But he was a doctor, and the only emergency room that was capable of taking care of him was where he was working. And so, like a lot of doctors are often the worst kinds of patients, he hesitated. And he starts, he's putting rags and towels, and he's getting lightheaded. He looks in the mirror, he's pale, his heart is beating. He knows he's going to pass out. If he passes out as he's hemorrhaging, he could face up, he'll bleed into his lungs, he's dead. But before he is able to call 911, because he's hesitating, he doesn't want to be taken to the emergency room where he works, he passes out, and the next thing he knows, he's floating in a room. The wall, it's a circular room. There are metal panels with tubes coming out of the wall, and he's floating there, and he looks down on the floor, or should be the floor, and it's an enormous window that shows the planet Earth, okay? And he looks across the room, and there's an ET, not the usual standard gray, but definitely a non-human entity. And he realizes at that point, he's not bleeding. The next moment, he's back in his bed, waking up the next morning. The bed is soaked with his own blood. He looks in the mirror. He stands up, of course. He doesn't pass out. He looks in the mirror. His color is good. He estimated that he probably lost a couple of units of blood, and he should have had transfusions. And he should have had an oral surgeon repair the cut artery in his jaw. He was cured. Now, this is just one case of 10 that we reviewed. So this is a medical doctor who asked that we not use his name. He's now on a career path in a federal agency. I'm not going to indicate anything more about him because he wanted strict anonymity. But this is very real, and it's happening not only to people who work outside the medical field, ordinary citizens, patients, but doctors who are having medical healings. And does that give you a feel? Okay. Fine.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for that.
Right.
I can add to this a little bit if you would like. As opposed to just from a medical, Western medical doctor point of view, and as well as leaving maybe Western civilization and our spiritual practices over here, we do know the Christian view of healing and laying hands on, but this is also found in Eastern spirituality practices as well. And there are quite a few studies in Japan on the healing powers of Qi. And that is, they describe it as using force and energy, not necessarily in that scientific way, but in the way we understand of raising vibrations and a collective energy. There's also an interpretation, which I kind of like this one because it's so simple and all of us do it constantly. And that's this spiritual gift of healing through the gift of gab. You know, when we're all here together in these rabbit hole experiences, do we not feel better by expressing our experiences? And we feel better once we interact with other people and kind of let them out and feel that we're not alone. And of course, there is the gifts of like healing through astral travel or various shamanic healings, ways of, I know there's some shamans that they envision, like somebody comes to them and they feel sick and they get a vision of like what type of medical herbs to use to treat whatever their ailment is. So I guess I just wanted to add that these themes aren't only just in Christianity with the ideal of healing or the power of group healing. They are found not only in Christianity, but all the way back to the beginnings of spirituality.
And you know, Nikki, you said something that reminded me of something in the Catholic religion I was raised in, which was whenever two or more of you are gathered in my name. Mm-hmm. That's basically the idea of church, and that's what's happening here. See, we tend to name it God, sky God, white beard, blah, 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 from our upbringing, you know? But it really is a matter of the oneness, whatever the oneness is, and that could be defined by anybody in any number of ways, and everyone could not even agree upon that. But when we're gathered together with a higher spirit in mind, that's my interpretation of what was meant by church.
Right. I agree with you there, Doug. And it's that sense of commune or communion. You know, we commune with each other, and you know, we create our own holy spaces. That I think that even kind of ties into the talks we were having about Mount Shasta. You know, there are other places, but I think what people are finding out that if you gathered the people in any place, you know, it can happen. Not that there aren't more like power-centered places, but I think it is with the experiencers and what they can bring into this, as well as, you know, communing for a healing or an astral healing, you know, all these levels, hands-on healing. A lot of people go back and forth. Like Grant said, it seems like there's this category where people have a gift to heal or or they have been healed. But there are, I think that's a little bit where we're lost in our own experiences a little bit, or we don't necessarily realize what's going on, to maybe develop those gifts that we all have. So.
Well, could I chime in a little bit here again?
Yeah, please.
Let's see, several things that come up that caught my interest. I studied under shamanism, let me start here, for a couple of years. Dr. Hank Wesselman in Sacramento, he's now on the Big Island, Hawaii. And, and one of the things I learned about shamanism is it was the predominant world religion, if you will, for the last 50,000 years. It preceded what we would call our current selection or banquet of religious experience through Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, you name it. Shamanism was the dominant religious practice worldwide. Now, in taking that shamanism workshop, it suddenly, eventually dawned on me that I was being called to be a shaman to my own soul, my own inner world, and heal that, and heal the one-sidedness that had developed because of my over-rationalization and education. I have Doug, you might be interested in this. I have a PhD in theoretical physics, so it kind of caught my interest in what you had to say about Walter Russell. But, but the bottom line is, we are called to do the inner journey and be our own healers. Now, if you ever noticed a shaman, he was basically the nut job in that community, that tribe. He was the one who probably got knocked in the head somewhere along the line and was a little off. Maybe we would call him schizophrenic or bipolar or something. And he had to live apart, basically, from the community. But of course, when the community wanted healing, they were all in. They would go over and visit him in his hut and see if he could help them. So all I'm saying is, if we're each called to be our own shaman or shamaness, you can expect that you're going to journey into hell and back in order to learn that technique of healing, self-healing. Remember, Christ, when he was on earth, the healings were merely an attraction of signs and wonders, as Grant likes to talk about the current UFO thing. It's to get our interest, it's to catch our attention. It's like saying to the mule, you know, that doesn't pay attention to the directions of its owner. But this isn't going to last forever. The honeymoon period is not going to last forever. At least it didn't for me, and I suspect I'm just a typical human here. But anyway, I just wanted to share those couple thoughts.
Can I jump in and say something?
Yeah, Giorgio.
Okay, all of those guys that we're talking about, Mount Shasta, Enrique, and they are my friends, and I've been with them a few times. And what I noticed is that healing is really key. It's important to develop our connections with the positive type of extraterrestrial beings that have been working with Mission Raman and other groups. For example, when in my first sighting with my uncle, Tadeo, how it began, it was when he was working with a medium in Peru with the Scarnet astral doctors from Ecuador. And they were trying to help others by transmitting energy through the hands, but the astral doctors would help my uncle's group, and they would go to hospitals and help people to transmit this healing energy, and it worked very well. And after a year of these communications through the medium, the astral doctors asked my my uncle's group, you know, do you want to meet our teachers? And they said, yes, sure. And that's when the extraterrestrials came in. And my uncle and another lady, Graciela Chelita Moreno, were able to communicate through automatic writing using this device, which is the planchette. Each one would put a hand on one side of the planchette, and that has a pen here with ball bearings. And this would be the fastest thing for automatic writing that you can imagine. It would go shoo, 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 shoo. Drawings, big letters, not like the Ouija board that goes letter by letter, but super fast. And so these extraterrestrial beings from different planets, including Apu, invited us to go to Chilca, where they have a base. And we went to Chilca, and that's where we saw UFO very up close, at a close range, like about 300 feet away. And it was 10 of us. We all saw it very clearly, and twice, it appeared twice. Stationary for about 1 minute. But then what happened? These entities continued relating with the people through healing techniques that they started teaching my uncle's group. And what we found is that it was a friendship more than, oh, they are ETs, they are too advanced. They didn't ask us to lose our rationality. They didn't ask us to believe just for believing. They didn't ask us to be irrational, like a shaman or something like this that would go beyond. In that sense, they asked us to connect through the heart and rationality, and simultaneously to open up the antenna, what they call the antenna. Now, my uncle's group never met the Rama group with Six of Paz. It was a separate group. But the work of this relationship, building intimacy and friendship, was through healing practices. And they were told to how to heal using colors, and how to meditate and create like an energy that concentrates in the group in a circle, and then send a color to a person with a specific ailment. But it was always through working through healing. This is why I think that if we are going to get closer to them, we need also to work with them through healing. That seems to be like karmically speaking, available to us. If they don't come to us, let's say for the first contact, like in Star Trek, that they come down and everybody's witnessing this and shaking hands, and the contact can be strengthened through healing. This is also why the Rama group practices this healing for the world meditation in a circle and all this. It's a way to create this connection. But what we have found is that they are friends. It's an intimate friendship. And it's different from CE5 because they asked some entities approach first a small group, like Ricardo, for example. He heard a voice, go out to the roof of your house and you will see us. Who is this? Who's talking? So they started the communication. Or in the case of my uncle, it was through the spirits, and they asked, do you want to meet our teachers? And they said yes, and they met. And then the communication with the extraterrestrials started. But it was like an invitation, and then through time, we developed trust because they never hurt us. They never, when people are scared, they leave. They try not to force the contact. It's this kind of extraterrestrial that should be beneficent for a first type of approach with humanity. easier to deal with than a grade that comes and abducts you. And another thing that I wanted to say is that Jesus. Okay, there is a spiritual component in the Rama group, which is crucial, because consistently through many contactees, these extraterrestrials have said that their main spiritual coordinator is Jesus. And I was recently talking with a friend from Chile who's a physical contactee, Marco. His name is Marco. You will probably meet him eventually. And when he was taken to Ganymede, he physically met, I mean, allegedly, that this is what he says, right? He physically met with Jesus. Allegedly, Jesus is physically alive. In several dimensional levels, he can manifest, materialize, and he can be in certain key places like Ganymede, where there's a council that coordinates the confederation. So if this is true, I don't think we should think that, oh, that's a pseudo religion. Maybe it's a necessary aspect that we need to accept in order to develop our contact capacities with beings like this. And I think that we tend to shy away from religious entities because there are many religious doctrines that do not match. But the essential thing is the caring, the truthfulness, the healing, the general goodness. Once you've got that in your life, and do not deceive yourself, all the other differences are not, of doctrines do not matter too much. So,
Giorgio, I wanted
to
to
consider.
add something, if I could. Thank
Yeah.
you, Giorgio, because I want to bring in another case that was described in our chapter. And you talk about friendship, and that's a very important component. It can almost achieve a status of being like family. And one of the healing cases involved a woman who chose to be identified only as Shannon. And she's a professional woman, known nationally, and so I won't mention her name or her profession, but many of the people I'm talking to right now to know of this person. And she for 30 years was having regular visitations during her reproductive years. Started when she was a teenager, and every 3 months she would have a visitation. At first she was terrified. It involved some reproductive procedures. She didn't want to get into the details of that, but I presume it was sampling ova. And there was one particular ET, these were tall grays that she was relating to, became like a father figure. He would reassure her, make sure she was not having pain. And over time, she would look to him during these recurrent visits to have a supportive role. This woman, when she was about the late 30s, developed chronic fatigue syndrome, which is a disabling disease of unknown etiology characterized by unrelenting fatigue. You sleep and you wake up every morning exhausted. For many years, the doctors did not know what this was, and they added insult to injury. The doctors were calling it the yuppie flu, and they're saying it's psychological, they're malingering. But practitioners, general practitioners like myself, I had an internal medicine practice, knew that these people weren't lying. When they were disabled by chronic fatigue syndrome, it wasn't to get disability. And so she was disabled from her profession. She had been highly paid and supervisor in an industry. And she was so disabled that as a mother, she couldn't even make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for her daughter. That was how terrible this disease was. And finally, after over 20 years of suffering, she decided she was going to look for help from an ET source. And she went to a channeler in Australia who was channeling a particular group of Greys, and she basically issued a test. She said, if you are really in touch with the Greys, presumably the same group that was healing, that was carrying out abductions of her every couple of months, send them to me and have them heal me. 4 nights later, this disabled woman in her early 60s reported an onboard experience that was typical of all her onboard experiences. She was in a room floating on a gurney-type stretcher. She looked above her, and there was either a Visiscreen or a television that was the length of her screen, her body, and it showed the shape of a female. She figured it was her. And different parts of the body were illuminated in different colors, and they were the exact locations where chronic fatigue syndrome is thought to produce inflammation, in her lymph nodes, in her spleen. And as she looked across the room, she saw 4 of the typical Greys that had interacted with her for decades. And they were surrounded by a halo. And at that moment, it felt like every muscle in her body was being electrocuted. And she had excruciating pain, something she had never experienced before. The next thing she remembered, she was waking up in her bed the next morning, and to her surprise, all the disabling symptoms, all the sleep disturbance, all the mental fog associated with chronic fatigue syndrome was healed. It was gone. And during her next visitation, she asked that senior ET that had a reassuring, comforting role during all the decades of her encounters. She said, why didn't you heal me before? And the answer was kind of sardonic. He said, you never asked us before. And the other question she asked was, well, why did you heal me? And the answer was, we take care of our own. So the sense of family, of communion, of shared fate is an integral part of the contact experience, and the healing demonstrate that in a very profound way. So
yeah,
I wanted
and
to,
there,
yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
and there are many different kinds of entities. Some subtler, some more dense. Some will produce pain in you, maybe to heal you. Others won't. I don't think that the ones that my uncle contacted or Ricardo would need to produce pain to heal. But there are all kinds, and the key.
Let me just finish. What's interesting about this story is that in recent years, the underlying cause of chronic fatigue syndrome is now being deciphered. And it's been discovered that the muscles of people with CSF, chronic fatigue syndrome, have abnormal metabolism. And so every muscle in the body is diseased in terms of this metabolic abnormality where they cannot produce sugar in their mitochondria in the normal way. And so the symptom that she had of every muscle in her body was being electrified, whether it was an actual healing modality or was meant to communicate that that's where the problem is, that they targeted the organ that was the cause, we now understand, likely cause of chronic fatigue syndrome. I just wanted to add that in. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So on the topic, I would like to share a profound personal healing experience I went through myself when Paul and I were in Mexico about, 2 years ago. And in the middle of the night, I got up and I was profoundly sick. I was extremely sick, fatigued. I had diarrhea. And Paul, you called it Montezuma's Revenge or something?
Montezuma's Revenge. He had a great case of
He thought that's what I had. And I was done. I couldn't lay down. I couldn't sit. I couldn't sleep. I was completely at the end of my rope. And I said, I need help. I really need help. I was calling up on all the angels. I have personal abduction experience and ET too. I called up on all the ETs. I called up on whatever. And I was done. I was like, I can't take this anymore. Paul went to get medication in the store, but the store was just closed. I mean, there was no help. So Paul, he's a healer himself, or he does a lot of body work too. So he decides at the moment to come lay behind me and he puts his hands on my back. And I've been in a distress for hours, completely hours. And from the moment he puts his hands on my back for the first time in those hours, my whole system relaxed, and I was afraid to move because I didn't want to lose that. And in about half a minute, I fell asleep. I was out. And normally, even in the day, my consciousness, my mind is so busy, I can't take naps because my mind just wants to stay in control. And in half a minute, I was completely gone. And in about an hour, I woke up and I'm like realizing what happened. Like, wait a minute, I've been in distress. I thought like I was dying. Paul put his hands on my back. I relaxed, and it was this whole scenario. I fell asleep. What just happened? And I was like very afraid in that moment that if I moved, I would go straight back into it. I was like, I don't want to move. I don't want to think. I don't want to say anything. I want to stay in this peace because finally I have some peace. And I had to go to the bathroom. So I was like, well, I have to move. I have to get to the bathroom. So I didn't say anything to Paul. He was sitting at the table. So carefully, I moved my body. I go to the bathroom. He's just watching me. He didn't say anything. Go to the bathroom. I feel fine. I come back out of the bathroom, and Paul just observes me and says, so how are you doing? And I'm like, I think I'm fine. And actually, in that moment in my distress, I said, I'm not going to eat for 2 weeks. I need to clear my body. Help me, please get over this. And when I'm over this, I'm not going to eat, and I'm going to fast to clear whatever this is. So I come out of the bathroom, and I'm like, I'm actually feeling good. And I'm just moving around. And I said, you know what, Paul? We had like 15 minutes left for free breakfast. So I'm like, oh my gosh, Paul, you better get to your breakfast. And I thought like, you know what, I actually feel good. Let me go with you. He's like, okay. And then all of a sudden, I realized like, this is miraculous. And I said, Paul, what did you do? What is it that I was then like trying to figure out? What did he do? So you should share that part.
Well, yeah, I've had a lot of healing experiences, a lot of courses and things in healing. And I don't know, sometimes magic works and sometimes it doesn't. This was a case where the magic really worked. And all I did is I put my hands on her back and I visualized the next day, which we were going to go into, and it was our last day in Mexico, that we were fine. We were going to go down to the beach. We were going to go swimming. We were going to go to the boardwalk and walk on the boardwalk and see all the people because it was our last day. And we would just have a regular, wonderful day in Mexico at Puerto Vallarta, where we were. And so I just visualized that. That was it.
And I'm like, wow. So what he visualized, I experienced. I was immediately back to normal. I even had, and that is I mean, to me, still I understand. I even had breakfast with eggs and bacon and everything on the menu because everything was gone. There was no trace in my whole system of any discomfort. And in the thing itself, I was suffering like I have never suffered before. So anyway, I want to share that with you because that was a profound instant healing. Beautiful. With no trace back afterwards of any
no adverse reactions afterwards.
Nothing.
Yeah.
All gone.
One last thing. I think that when we practice our healing capacities or healing technique, the antenna used to communicate with these beings improves. I think there's a connection there.
I agree.
And may I jump in real quick?
Go ahead, Amar.
I just wanted to ask, growing up atheist, in my OBEs recently, I've experienced like Jewish symbolism, some Christian symbolism, and Islamic as well. What do you guys think that is? Why does that happen? And also, when I think about, when we talk about Muhammad, he was meditating in a cave when he met Gabriel, and then he spoke to him. And Moses went to the mountain, and I think he meditated. And also there's Jesus's 30 missing years that maybe he practiced meditation in them. what do you guys think about that? I would like to know Grant's opinion and others if you guys want to share.
Who wants to jump in?
Well, I want to, from my personal experience, I think we all have this profound capability and connection to source, no matter what religion, no matter where you live, no matter age, no matter, we all have that internal power. And if we call on it and tap into that, and there's so many ways, and it's a personal journey, I think that's the core of it all. I mean,
it can show up in,
yeah, it can show up in any form and in any way. That's my personal take on that.
My personal take on it is an example that came from our contact team. In 1993, a Russian Jewish young man joined our team who was like, shall we say, Stephen Greer, prime contactee. He was like a UFO magnet. You call him Misha. That's not his real name. And once he joined our team, we immediately had a boost in our contact experiences. But one of the strange things that happened was that this Jewish fellow who had a minimal contact with his religion, and I was of Jewish descent but raised as an atheist, he started experiencing stigmata, the blood of Christ. And one of our team members was a respiratory therapist. She was in an administrative meeting with Misha, and he started bleeding from his hands. She looked at his finger, and about a ½ centimeter hole was apparent there, and it was pumping out blood. She had some alcohol swipes because she was a respiratory therapist. She immediately swiped it to try to clear the bleeding site, and she swiped it twice, and then she saw the hole close up completely. It was a hole in his finger. Now, why would UFO intelligences do that? I think they were trying to tell us that all the healing modalities and all the contact experiences, all the faiths are being connected by consciousness. And so they chose to give that as a very practical consequence that was the message. I think that's the message they're sending you, Amar. I think they're sending you that all the religions have to agree, that science and religion have to agree, and they're giving you a series of dreams to demonstrate the unity of consciousness, the unity of all faiths, and the unity of science and religion.
Yeah, thank you. That's why I made a pact with God, because now I believe in him and I believe there's a creator. I made a pact that I won't follow any organized religion, meaning led by a government or any entity, but I will be a good person and do at least most of the 10 commandments, where you shall not kill, you shall not steal, and so on. And that, thank you for your replies. Yep.
Just to Joseph, I would say that the source of all religions is the same. It's just that as they come into being, the source cloaks itself in the garments of the community in which it manifests, and makes itself peculiar in its form to that community, so that they can relate to it according to their customs and beliefs. So it would be in accordance with Joseph, what he had to say there, I think.
I appreciate you, Greg.
I was going to say if you ever look on John Lear's site, he's friends with Lou Baldwin. I don't know how many people know about Lou Baldwin, who is an experiencer, quite an amazing guy. And Lou always told John, and John Lear always puts on his site, to live without anger, hate, or greed. Those three, that simplest little thing. And I guess you could go by treat others as you want to be treated, which I pretty much do. And yeah, it's pretty simple. But I put in the chat earlier that this Dr. Party, who was a anesthesiologist, who was rather crass and callous to his patients, and he'd be putting them under and watching his watch and checking his stock market report, you know, as these people would be fighting for their lives. He kind of ignored them and kind of was just revolving around all his money and all his wealth and everything till he got prostate cancer and had to have the most severe operation. And now he is on the table, and now he's being treated, and now he leaves his body. And now this is a man from India who's got a family in India. He was in California at the time. He left his body, went onto the ceiling of the hospital, saw a whole bunch of things nobody could account for, went to India and sat next to his mother and her sister and his sister on the couch in India, could name what they were wearing, saw the whole thing, met his father, took a whole walk through India and realized all the hardship that his father went through with Pakistan, India-Pakistan relationships and everything like that, and met the Archangel Gabriel and Michael. Now, he goes on to stress in his book that he had no belief in Archangel Michael or Gabriel. This was not like, so it's like, it's not only people raised with Jesus that see Jesus or vice versa. And I find this to be very compelling, that, you know, everybody is going to try to tell you that it's, well, you believed in that and so you created it in your own mind. Well, so many NDE experiences that I read seem to either have an experience with Christ or angels or guides and so on. And I find that to be fascinating.
Yeah, I agree with you, because one of my experiences was an orb that read the Quran to me. And growing up atheist, I don't know anything off of my head, you know. It wasn't, I know the basic stuff, but I don't know what was being told to me. So it couldn't be me. That was my thought. Like, because sometimes in those trance states, you do hear your thoughts when you think about them. But yeah, thank you.
An orb was reading to you?
Yeah, one of my experiences, I had woken up and there was an orb in my room and it started reading the Quran. That was at the very yeah.
That's good.
Hey, Grant, you got to get that orb on your show.
No, I actually, because I was still, it was in the very beginning of my experiences. I was kind of angry because I didn't want it to do with religion. You know what I mean? So I was surprised myself. I wasn't even thinking about religion when that happened.
A thought always comes to me because I had a similar experience where just in the chat, I was pointing out that even with Mr. Bledsoe's Lady in White, you know, I was raised Catholic, but I kind of shucked it my whole life. But I had, and in a moment of despair, I had that iconic Mary vision where it was like mother and child. And it annoyed me as well. I was like, what is this? I've denied my religion and now you're going to send me Mary, you know, but there was more to it than just that iconography that manifested for me. And it wasn't like a physical, here's a woman holding a child. It was more of like that iconic shape all in just light. And I mean, I recognized the shape, but I also was very aware that that presence wasn't the only thing there. You know, I also felt the presence of my grandmothers and my grandparents and my grandfathers as well, I guess is what I was saying. And it's kind of led me into this thought that, you know, these icons appearing to people without faith or from a different sort of faith, it leads me to that it's all connected, as we are all connected subconsciously. So even if you don't experience Christianity and these icons come to you, somewhere in our oneness, conscious connectedness, you have experienced it, whether it was a past life, a future life, somebody else's life, that's all kind of, you know, tied into your conscious experience. So I think it's beautiful.
I would like to add something. That working for the good of others, it seems to be like a natural, easier way to connect with the cosmos and with these beings, at least the benevolent ones, right? Most of them seem to be that way, apparently. But because in Peru, back in 1975, when all this was starting, my uncle's group was given a task to find an object, probably not from this earth, and they were giving a specific place to go and dig in the desert, and they found something metallic deep down inside. But then they said, "Oh, we're tired. Oh no, let's go back tomorrow. Let's go back to Lima and then return." When they returned, it was gone. And another task they were asked to do was to give a conference in Lima, and this was 1975. Okay, they were all businessmen. They were all known in society, sort of. They had a serious, persona. They hired the place and everything, and they rented the place and everything. And then at the last moment, they recanted. They could not do it. So in the end, they settled for another 15 years healing work with the extraterrestrial energies and the colors they were given. They helped a lot of people. A lot of persons were really helped. So that was the basic thing they could work with, healing.
I wanted to say something back to Nikki, that the near-death experiences, and I what I do is I copy paste into my little reader at night, and then I let it read to me, which is a lot easier because I can't read very well. I'm a bit dyslexic. I can read, but I struggle with it. So I'd rather someone read to me and put me to sleep that way. But there isn't a single person in the near-death experience that I've ever read that hasn't said oneness is the entire thing it's all about. It's all about we're one. There's a oneness. And so when you go ahead and take time to help somebody down the street or help someone that's like impeding in your own progress for your own whatever you're up to, your job or your goal or your whatever, and you actually take some time out and say, no, I'm going to actually do something. I'm going to give up a day and do something for someone else. Inadvertently, it seems that you are doing the best thing you could ever do for yourself. I know it sounds like a reverse plan for selfishness, It's like, I got a way of being selfish by helping others. But there really is a marvelous thing to how the wheels of your own world seem to move and get worked out easier when you are caring for, when you see others as you see yourself. It's that simple. When you see a stranger as if you see yourself, it's a great definition of what love is. And so in near-death experiences, this oneness is common throughout it all. Nobody ever says, oh no, we're not one. They may say there's some scary parts. They may say there's some angelic parts. Some may see angels. One I recently read saw orbs with people in them and so on. But everybody agrees that there's no time and everything is oneness. So those things.
I'll just add one thing to that. The free survey shows that 54% of all experiencers claim that they were talked to about oneness and love, and you get people on board the ship. One was the guy who wrote the book, The Children of the Greys, and he was no friend of the Greys. He really was really angry that they'd taken this child from him, and he said to the Grey, he said, okay, so it's your concept of God. And the being said, we are one with the one who is all. And Bashar, the famous alien channeler, says, the one is the all are the one. So it is a key message that you do get even in the UFO experiences. And then you talked about this thing about the things that we get. A lot of times I think what you're getting in your experience is what you need. And I find that because I do a lot of work on this, on the psilocybin and the DMT experiments that have been done and stuff like that. And Groff, who worked on the high dose LSD experiences, talked about the fact that they have a thing that can actually pull you out of it. And he says you never do it. If the person is going through a very negative experience on an LSD, that's basically cleaning house, that you need to go through that experience. And so what you do is you just encourage the person to go towards it, don't walk away. And it sort of cleans things up, that you have to reset, almost like resetting the brain. So you get a lot of these things where you get what you want. And the last example I use everybody knows I'm a big Michael Newton fan. Michael Newton had the experience where the minister comes in. He's a fire and brimstone minister, comes in, and he's getting this regression. And then in the middle of the regression, the guy said, "The devil's here." And Newton said, "What do you mean the devil's here?" "He's here. He's right in the room." And he said, "What do you mean? I can't see him. Where is he?" "He's right standing right in front of you. Can't you see him?" And he said, "No, I don't see him. I don't see him." And he said, "What does he look like?" And the guy said, "Oh, he's got this leathery skin," and he's describing Satan is standing there, and he's just petrified. He's just screaming and yelling. And then Newton says, "Well, what's he? What's below his waist?" And he said, "There's nothing. It's just like a sort of a misty sort of smoke." And he said, "Okay, take a closer look. Who is it really?" And then the guy goes, it's my spirit guide. He's just trying to teach me a lesson that I was preaching fire and brimstone, and now I'm getting a taste of my own medicine. That is his soul guide. So I think a lot of the stuff that you experience, whatever it is, whether it's 5-methoxy-DMT or high dose psilocybin or whatever it is, these people all describe this sort of thing, that it's a rough road when you get to these high doses. But when you come out, people will say almost the same thing they say with the UFO experience. 70% will say it was one of the most meaningful experiences of their life. And you get the same thing with UFO experiencers, who will talk about 70% saying it was one of the most, it may be a very troubling experience, but it was on the birth, it was equivalent to the birth of a child or the death of a parent. Very, very meaningful experience. And people become better. They become more empathetic, less materialistic, more loving. All these patterns that you'll get across the spectrums of people who have these sort of, I call them like contact modalities, where you get thrown into the field, or you get yourself in the field, and you're outside this physical reality where we think everything is just random biological robots in a random meaningless universe. When you get in that field, everybody has basically the same sort of experience, which may be very terrifying at times, but very meaningful, and changes the person, basically rewires the person's brain.
Brad.
Yeah.
How is it possible that your rabbit hole meetings have turned into a church group?
We always make that joke at the UFO conferences. I always say, people think, when you go to a big UFO conference or something, and the people back home think that we're sitting there with UFO photographs and exchanging photographs. It always comes down to this kind of discussion of how does the world work? What is God? It's almost always that. At UFO conferences, you almost never talk about UFOs. It's really weird.
I think it's instructional.
Yeah. It makes you sort of think as to, and that's my main objective, is not so much to see a UFO or film a UFO, is to figure out, because the first night I saw it, I fell off the edge of the earth. I couldn't believe that this was actually for real. And the second night, I remember I saw it came right out. It's the second night, and then it was flying away. And to this day, it's like it happened yesterday. I'm thinking, so what is it doing? Like, what is going on? And I was always that thing in the back of my mind. I had seen it. I knew it was for real. Now I'm going to figure out what's going on. So I think that's what a lot of this is, that we sit down and we start to exchange, and you get into that thing where people are trying to figure out not so much are UFOs real, but what is really going on, and why are we here, and why did we see this, and why do people get healed, and all these kind of things. And it throws you out almost like a philosophical, but in UFO conferences, it's almost always discussions like that, always.
It would be funny if in church they were discussing UFOs. That would be the flip side of it, I mean, so whatever gets you into it, but it is remarkable that it heads back to this, because when you keep reducing it down, you keep looking for the higher, part of the pyramid, and it seems to be this oneness and our connection throughout everybody. And your description from Bashar and whatever else you said there, Brent, is absolutely the best. We are one with the all, and the all with the whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, and it may be that's comes down to the thing is what's actually going on. And I'll just leave with this. If anybody wants to jump in, I'll just do this last story, and then if nobody has anything, we'll shut down. Everybody knows the New York Times article that was written, and we have Leslie Kane, who's the New York Times article, and everybody says, oh, this is great. We've got a UFO program, and they got crash flying saucers, and we're going to get to the bottom of this thing. And there's an interview she just did with Jeffrey Mishlove. And you got to remember, this is the UFO lady for the New York Times. And she's talking about being in a physical seance. And I always say, if you want to know what's going on, you got to go to these other modalities like physical seances. And she talks about being in the physical seance. And she says, I'm sitting there, and this it's like this water starts coming up on the table. Looks like water moving towards her, and it's moving, very fluid. And all of a sudden, this hand comes out of the this water type stuff right in front of her, and the person, the disincarnate being, is talking to her. And this is the New York Times lady, and she says, "I feel the hand. I can feel the knuckles, the nails. It's softer than a regular hand, but it is a real hand. It's warm. It is a real hand, and it's sitting there, and then it bangs on the table a couple of times, and then it just sort of disappears." And that almost is what you see with the UFO phenomena, that it really doesn't stick around very much. It's just sort of like trying to crack your brain. It's trying to get you to sort of figure like, wow, something really weird is going on. And that's what Kit Green said. If you know the whole story with Jim Peniston from the Rendlesham Forest thing, he was contacted by Kit Green to get his DNA, and he said, "I'm going to find out what the heck this guy's up to. I'm going to find out what he's doing." And he said, "Okay, what are you guys doing? You're looking at all these experiencers. They got Chris Bledsoe's DNA, and they went through all these different people at Close Encounters." And he said, "Well, we're trying to do propulsion." And Jim Peniston said, "Bull, you're not trying to do propulsion. Get out of here." And he said, "Well, I probably used the wrong word. We're trying to figure out how does the phenomena pop into our 3D environment and pop out just as quickly." And that's when you see Leslie Kean describing this hand, and you start to realize, like, man, we have got no concept of what's going on. We have no idea what's going on. We think we know what's going on, but it is, and that's what I say, it'll be
That's
a
the
lot
closest
more,
thing to the truth, Grant.
what's that?
That's all I'm going to say.
It's going to be a lot more spiritual, a lot less physical, and 1,000 times more complex than people think it is.
Can I share a few snippets to round out my contribution here?
Yeah.
To see what is the way it is something the spirit of the depths teaches one. And this is what's happening. We're getting in touch with the spirit of the depths, like Grant, you did recently with your hallucinogenic experience there. The spirit of the depths brings collective hell and destruction to your existing worldview. It'll challenge it, as we all know. The spirit of this time is the accumulated knowledge of everything that has been made conscious by our religious traditions or esoterics. The spirit of the depths of the ancient Gnostics became the spirit of the depths for Jung, Carl Jung. The spirit of the depths will take everything away from you. You are left without words and are pulled down and down and down into the depths of your soul. The spirit of the depths will become commodified, meaning commercialized. You will become an outcast for the rest of your life if you listen to the spirit of the depths, for that is what it means to be a shaman, and we're all called to be our own shaman. You are graduating to the place of usefulness to the spirit of the depths. Don't invite the spirit of the depths. It is hell. If you start with the three, like the Trinity, you become the one. That's it.
Well, everybody, I would probably say one last thing. I just want to say one more thing about Walter Russell. Walter Russell would make the point that the poem is not the poet. And so when you read the poetry and see the words, that's not the poet. The poet is mind. The mind is where the symphony is. The symphony is just the manifestation of it. So we're all equal in this tap in to the universal knowing, the universal language. And most of us just don't believe it. Like genius is the inner genie. The inner genie, everybody has a genie in them, an inner knowing, an inner knowledge. And we always think genius is just for, you know, Einstein or this one or that one. Most of us sell our own intuition out. We hear a little message and we go, well, that can't be real. And so, you know, if it's me, it can't be real, you know? So, you know, we have to really realize to go deep in, to go inside. And the best way I know anything, when I try to decipher the absolute insanity of the world that we're living right now, the best way I know anything, right or wrong, is my intuition.
You're right, Doug.
And that's it. It's my
You're
intuition.
right.
Yeah, you see, we're
Because,
all,
you know, it's what's within.
So I'm done.
we're all prophets to the extent that we can speak of what the spirit of the depths has said to us. That gives us the right. And prophecy, by the way, is not about telling the future. It's about telling what is.
Beautiful. I'll leave with this. We're going to do the interview with Alan. We'll do it separately. We'll post it. One of the two things I wanted to bring up with him was the idea that I think in a way we are guided by our higher self or by something. He tells the story of how this movie came to be, is that he used this automatic writing thing where he'd sit at a computer and he wouldn't think and his fingers would just type, and he looked at it and it was 30 pages of a story about a woman being abducted. He'd never thought about abduction or UFOs or whatever. And that's where he followed it. And then he had a movie called Humano, which was a first movie that he did. And he was giving a lecture on it. And he had this UFO book there. And the guy who wrote the book 15 years before, and had been out of print for 15 years, happened to be in the audience, saw him with this book and said, "What are you doing with my book?" And that the case that he talks about in the movie is in that book. That was the researcher, and that's what led him. So you get these things where you get these synchronicities that seem to indicate it leads you, that you are open. And so if you want to know how this all works, one of the people who's really good at it is Desta, and it's Tuesday night, and the UFO group from Winnipeg. You can listen to her explain. She has spent a lot of time working on this thing, and she has a pattern to get in the field. And if she can get in the field, I think everybody else can learn to do it as well. It's just a matter of whatever, turning off your left brain, quieting that part of your brain, picking up the signal. But Tuesday night, I encourage it because Desta, this is only maybe the third lecture she's done, and she has a lot of the answers that people are seeking. So
Thanks, everyone.
So does that mean we're going to get
Nice to see you.
Thank you, everyone.
I will.
I will post the Alan interview on the YouTube once we do it.
Yeah, and Desta's invite.
I'll send it to the list. I wasn't gonna though. Nice to see everyone.
All right, Jared. Nice seeing
Thank you.
everybody. Great meeting. Thank you so
Bye,
much.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing.